We can actually increase the attack of the sound with a compressor, which we can actually make it cut through really nicely. And for that, we'll actually use the VCA, because the VCA compressor is known for having an incredibly fast attack. So let's lower the threshold. And you can hear that snap that we're giving it there. And that's actually the amount of the attack that comes through is actually set up with the attack button here. Change the release setting a bit. Go to the plug-in there. Okay, we'll increase the gain. Add a bit more compression to it. That's a bit too much. That's quite nice. There we go. That's nice. Now you compare it to the original sound. The original sound was quite fat and flabby. That's a bit more in the pocket. We can edit this later on, because what we need to do is get the interaction between the two synth lines. So for now, actually what we'll do is actually insert a little plugin afterwards, a little delay plugin. And we'll mess with this for a bit, see if we can get, let's have a look. We'll use the usual normal Logic tape delay. See, that's the wrong setting. We'll set the dry a little less, the dry it to 100%, the wet a little less. Now I'll actually use a low cut in the plugin as well to take the bass out of the delay, which makes it sound, you know, like it fits in a little bit better. Currently the delay is a little bit muddy, so we'll take the low cut out. And I'll actually give it a little bit of high cut as well, so the delay fits in its own little pocket rather than smearing the sound of the original riff. That's why these two parameters are actually included there, so you can make the delay sound a little different. You can, of course, if you want to, use a bus delay or an auxiliary delay that we've set up earlier. But what I want to do with this one in particular is actually have it so the sound can be treated as one. And if I want to insert a filter after this sound, then it will actually filter the delay as well as the sound itself. So now I'm going to actually insert a little reverb here as well. Let's try the classic Space Designer. Now this is just to give it a bit of stereo width and actually some character as well. Hey, there we go, that's a bit big. Let's go for a small space and we'll go for plate reverbs. Let's have a go at the micro plate. Try the next one. That's a bit too big. Bright vocals, let's go small spaces. Let's try a gate. That's nice, because you can't actually hear the verb, but you can actually hear the character it's added to it. It's giving it a lot more of a stereo feel. Now in the verb as well, which is a really nice feature, you've got an EQ function, which I'll show you there. And we can actually go ahead and EQ the reverb if we like. And I actually like to sometimes take the bottom end out of there. Again, so it doesn't muddy up the sound too much. They see you can actually EQ the reverb itself. You can give it some more definition or less definition depending on how it's interacting with the sound. Bypass that. See, it's just adding a bit of character to it, which is nice. Okay. You can see it's pretty loud. The reason why it's so loud in the mix is because we've actually increased the attack so much with the compressor that the attack is forcing it to clip on the channel. So we've got to be aware of that. We might have to actually insert a limiter after it to actually to tame those peaks a little bit. You can see pretty high. So what we can do is we can move these plugins out of the way here by holding the Apple key. Let's move these plugins down. After the compressor, we'll insert a limiter. If if I remember where it is. There we go. Let's put the limiter on there. And what that will do is actually just bring down the level of those very sharp attacks. You can see there, you can see that's the amount of how much I'm bringing those attacks down, which gives me far more actual level to play with, far more headroom with the sound. Whereas before, so I'm still getting that clicky characteristic at the beginning of the sound, but I've actually tamed the peaks a little bit, which enables me to push the level a little bit higher. Now I've inserted the limiter before the tape delay and the space designer because I want to actually, I don't want to be limiting the delay or the reverb. I just want to limit the sound before it goes to the delay and the reverb. Now, obviously I've got my auxiliary effects set up here, so I can actually look at this and go to bus 1. Let's have a look at the different types of delay we've got here. We can actually add another delay onto it if we want to. Which is quite nice. Now, we can actually automate that again when it comes to the arrangement, which I'll show you on the next episode. What I am going to do for now, though, is go to one of our spare auxiliary channels that we set up, and I'll show you a little interesting technique. We've got these, let me shut that down. Yeah. So over here, we've got the 3 spare auxiliary channels. Okay. Now, this one in particular, I'm going to actually put a huge reverb on here. Now, we can actually use, I like to use the Logic Silververb because for some reason, this is the reverb that was actually bundled with Logic in the original version of the Logic Audio, and for some reason they've just left it on there. It's really old code, it's a really bad sounding reverb, but it's got a character of its own, and I really like it, and particularly because you can set the reverb time very long, which we're going to do here, room size. And I'll show you what this actually does. So I can then set that to, make sure that you name your bus first, because if you don't, your auxiliary, sorry, if you don't, I'll call it Doom Verb. If you don't, it won't show up in the buses when you come to actually assign it. Okay, so there we go. Set it to unity gain, hold Option, press there we go. So let's pick that. You can see now we go into there, we can see, just zoom in on that for you. You can see that we've got Doom Verb set up as we've named it previously. Let's actually pick that, it helps. That's there. Now, the reason why I've set that up is because you'll see when it comes to the arrangement how useful a really long reverb like that actually is, because you can sort of increase the intensity of the sound as we're building up to maybe a breakdown or even a crescendo of some kind or whatever. It's just something that's really nice to use in the arrangement. So that's set up there. Okay. Now, I can dirty that sound up a little bit more. I'm still not 100% satisfied with it. It still hasn't got the character I want. So let's go ahead and actually insert a little Overdrive plugin. Now, this, as we've discussed before, is like a tape saturation emulator, which is really nice to use on things. Distortion. Let's put a little bit of overdrive on. Now, you can use it as heavy or as light as you like. I like to just turn it down and just add a little bit of drive. Put some little reverb on there. You can hear that without it. Just boost the signal a bit, dirties it up a little bit, you know. We can even go as far, if you want to, we can actually insert let's go for a Bitcrusher. Now a Bitcrusher just gives it something, that little bit of zing. And gives you further possibilities for automating towards, you know, in places in your track, basically in the arrangement. See the Bitcrusher. Just adds that little zing and a bit more character. Now you'll notice that we're working with the sound in solo, which isn't always a good idea, because you can get a sound to sound amazing, it sounds brilliant, but as soon as you drop it into the track, it just doesn't work. So be very aware of that. What I'm doing here is actually just showing you some techniques of actually making the sound and working with some plugins, etc. But it's sometimes not a good idea to actually do it in isolation. And you're better off doing it while the track is running. Okay, so let's mess with the reverb. So there you go, we've had a little bit more character to the sound, we've actually dirtied it up a little bit, it's actually got a nice stereo width, but as again, bear in mind that it might not interact with the next sound. So let's have a look at the next one. Great sound, really like that. But the first thing I'm thinking of, let's give it some compression. Again, same sort of things we did before. Dynamics, we'll give it a bit of bite at the attack so it really cuts through. For that we'll use the VCA, which is a really nice emulation. Let's turn the threshold down, give it some more ratio. Let me zoom in on this properly for you so you can see what I'm actually doing. You don't want to do too much. You see, it just gives it a little bit more bite to start with. So that's the first thing. And again, when we come to actually open up the filter a little bit, if I get in the right place. There we go. Already sounding much fatter and warmer.